The court reporter is Leslie Todd, who will now administer the oath.
Raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Murphy. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fine, thank you.
You understand that you've been proffered here as a witness to testify on behalf of the Monsanto Corporation, correct?
I do.
Okay. And you're currently an employee of the Monsanto Corporation, right?
Yes, Monsanto and now Bayer.
Bayer. So you're technically an employee of Bayer now,
I am.
right? How long have you been an employee of the Monsanto Corporation, Mr. Murphy?
Since January of 2013.
Correct. Okay. I'd like to mark exhibit number 2 to your deposition. And this is what appears to be your LinkedIn page, correct, sir?
Yes, that's right.
If I could just stop right there, do you have any background in sciences?
No, sir. My degree is in communication and journalism.
You don't have any independent knowledge of chemistry, correct?
No, my knowledge of the science behind our products would come from my conversations with Monsanto scientists.
So you would defer to your Monsanto colleagues, other Monsanto colleagues, when it comes to scientific issues pertaining to the product, correct?
That's correct.
Would the individuals that you would defer to include people like Dr. Donna Farmer?
Yes.
And people like Dr. Bill Hydens?
Yes.
And it says direct global media relations. Is it fair to say that the judgment that you exercised in your position at the Monsanto Company helped direct corporate policy in the areas identified in your LinkedIn profile?
My responsibilities would have included working with our team to determine how best to receive inquiries coming in from reporters, to work with our scientists to develop those responses, our proactive strategies around reaching out to reporters, and yes, I would have provided direction over those activities.
And that would have eventually shaped Monsanto corporate policy with respect to the media outreach and the global media relations that the Monsanto Company engaged in with respect to the Roundup litigation.
I'm struggling to understand exactly what you mean, again, by shaping the corporate policy, but yes, I did. I did direct and provide leadership for those activities.
Please tell the jury who Mr. Scott Partridge is, sir.
Mr. Partridge was the Vice President of Strategy at Monsanto Company.
Was.
He is now the General Counsel for Bayer in North America.
You're familiar with IARC, correct, sir?
Yes, I am.
And do you know how long IARC has been around for?
My understanding is 50 or so years.
Large part of your responsibilities at Monsanto involved media response to the 2015 IARC classification of glyphosate, correct?
Yes.
Go back to early 2015, before IARC had classified glyphosate. Also, that's exhibit number 7 to your deposition. And this is an email with an accompanying attachment sent by Kimberly Link to J.D. Dobson on February 27th, 2015. That's about, less than a month or so before the IARC announced its classification, correct?
Yeah.
And on the first page of this document, Ms. Link says, I just spoke with Kelly. Here's our final draft plan. You see that?
I do.
And attached is the final draft plan. If you turn to the first page of the attachment, and it's titled Monsanto Response Plan to IARC Decision, correct? And if you turn to the next page of the attachment there, under subsection social/digital, 3 paragraphs down, it says Monsanto, as a leading manufacturer of glyphosate and as a company with reputation challenges, will have a very limited credibility when speaking on the topic of glyphosate safety. Do you see that, sir?
I do see that written there.
Ms. Link says that Monsanto will have very limited credibility when speaking on the topic of glyphosate safety, correct?
That is what she or someone appears to have written there.
What are some of the reputation challenges facing Monsanto?
I think in the current social climate, people have a fair number of questions about where their food comes and how it's produced. And in that context, things like genetically modified organisms, or genetically modified seeds, in the case of our company, have evoked a lot of questions and emotional responses from people. And for quite a while, I think Monsanto did not do enough to engage in those conversations and to help people understand the importance and the benefits and the safety of those technologies. And I think that over time created a reputational challenge that Monsanto was working to address.
Take a look at the first page of the attachment there, under the main heading. It says, on mainstream media, social media, and employee communications, we recommend an approach that seeks to include Monsanto's voice in the conversation about IARC and glyphosate, but as much as possible, defer to other positive voices from industry, academia, and elsewhere. Do you see that, sir?
I do see that.
Ms. Link says that Monsanto should be deferring to these third parties as much as possible, correct?
That's what's written in this particular document.
So part of Monsanto's plan in responding to IARC was to get Monsanto's messages regarding the IARC classification out there, but ideally at an arm's length from Monsanto, correct?
That's what's written in this document. It says as much as possible. This document is a reflection of the views of one plan at one point in time. As we moved forward after the IARC classification, again, we were very, very forthright in engaging with agriculture groups, engaging with reporters, engaging on social media to share the company's views. We kept agriculture groups and others informed. We were pleased that many of them continued to speak out as well about what they saw as an inaccurate classification. But Monsanto was always very forthright in sharing our views about the classification.
I'd just like to turn your attention to Ms. Link's second sentence there. She says, best case scenario is that these other voices take on the bulk of the communication about IARC and glyphosate. So Monsanto's ultimate goal was to ensure that the majority of its messaging regarding IARC was issued through the third parties, correct?
Again, that's what's written in one plan at one point in time.
Now, at the time of generating this response plan, Monsanto had not yet read the IARC monograph on glyphosate, correct?
That's correct, and that's why you see multiple scenarios in the document.
In the paragraph, the second paragraph down from the top, GMO answer and discovery.monsanto.com, it says canned text responses should be developed in advance for responding to questions specifically about IARC's ruling. See that, sir?
I do.
A canned response, though, is a type of response that you would give to questions regardless of what the question is seeking an answer to, correct? You're given the same response.
That's not my understanding of the word in this context. Again, here this is a preparedness plan talking about different channels that would be used at the time the opinion came out. And so I think in this case, canned would mean more like draft or pre-prepared.
It doesn't say draft, does it? It says canned.
And I'm explaining to you my understanding based on the context in this document of what that word would mean.
Was it Monsanto's intention to orchestrate an outcry with the IARC decision?
No, that's not how I would characterize what our approach was at the time. I would say our approach would have been to inform stakeholders, to share information with them, to invite them and encourage them even to speak out. I'm aware that characterization has been used in certain documents, but it's not how I would characterize our approach.
I'm going to mark as exhibit number 8 to your deposition.
Thank you.
Series of emails between Monsanto employees and Dr. Donna Farmer to various Monsanto employees, including Miss Kimberly Link, and it's dated February 24th, 2015. And again, that's before the IARC classification has been announced, correct, sir?
Yes, but it was the plan. The plan was developed by people in corporate engagement and sent out for review. And then, yes, the top email here is from Donna Farmer back to that group with what appear to be her edits on the document.
And the subject is IARC outreach, correct?
Yes.
If you look at, turn to page ending in Bates 927. And you look at the bottom, this section is titled Preparedness and Engagement Plan for IARC Carcinogen Rating of Glyphosate. And at the bottom it says, post-IARC, orchestrate outcry with IARC decision March 10, 2015. So before Monsanto knows what IARC's classification would be, Monsanto's intention was to orchestrate an outcry should the classification be adverse to Monsanto's Roundup image, correct?
I think the words that are written here are not how I would accurately characterize Monsanto's engagement after the IARC opinion came out. Certainly, we felt very strongly that the IARC opinion was and is incorrect. I think we've been very forthright in how we have explained that our views on that opinion and the science. I think our engagement with third parties has focused on sharing information with them and asking them to weigh in on the science as well. But I would not characterize that as orchestrating outcry.
Yet this plan, no one at Monsanto, out of the several dozen or so people that looked at this plan, no one thought, hey, let's not orchestrate an outcry, let's not characterize it as orchestrating an outcry, correct?
That's what is written in the plan here. But I'm telling you, having been involved in our response activities, I don't feel that orchestrating outcry is an accurate reflection of what we've done.
Or did you share with your colleagues at Monsanto that that's not an accurate reflection of what you were doing?
If you go back and look at the distribution on this on this plan, I am not a recipient of.
You held the lead position in corporate engagement, correct?
Yes.
Your testimony is that your Monsanto colleagues did not share a IARC outreach communication plan with you a month before the classification occurred.
That's correct.
Let's take a look at the row, so 3 rows down from the one we were just looking at. It says lead voice in, quote, who is IARC, unquote, plus 2B outrage. And 2B outrage, 2B is referring to the IARC classification of 2B possible human carcinogen, correct?
Yes, I believe that's what's meant in this context.
So Monsanto planned to create outrage with respect to the decision even if IARC had classified glyphosate as a possible human carcinogen?
As I've explained, I think what is meant in this particular column on the plan was that Monsanto colleagues would be reaching out to industry associations and other groups that care about glyphosate, care about the agricultural industry, and providing information to them so that if they chose, they could speak out and share their views on the importance and the safety of glyphosate.
Speak out in outrage, correct?
Again, I think outrage is not how I would accurately describe that. I think they would speak out, to defend the value of glyphosate for their farming operations, the important role that it plays in making their farming operations more sustainable, and their confidence in the safety of the product. And I do think they would do that in an emotional way because glyphosate is very important for them. But I don't think outrage is the right way to characterize it.
Before IARC's decision, Monsanto's employees are characterizing their efforts as wanting to orchestrate an outcry. But after the decision and now in the lawsuit, you have a different definition of what actually occurred, correct?
I've explained that the activities that have been undertaken over the past few years have focused more on providing balance, answering questions, sharing information, discussing the science, and I would not characterize those as orchestrating outcry.
Did Monsanto plan to invalidate the irrelevance of the IR classification?
No, I'm not sure exactly what you mean with your phrasing there. We certainly had questions that we raised about the IARC opinion because we thought that it was incorrect and inconsistent with the conclusions of regulators around the world.
Now, this is a document produced by Monsanto in this litigation. Here it says goals, and number D says invalidate relevance of IARC. Do you see that, sir?
I do see it written there.
So in July of 2015, a couple of months after IARC had announced its classification, Monsanto's goal was to invalidate the relevance of IARC.
So I see the point written there. I think the context around it is important, where it's talking about the retraction, the need for retraction, clarification, minimization, preventing future bad decisions on other products. I think in that overarching context, that helps clarify what what the author of the document was suggesting.
I understand that's the answer that you're giving now, but internally, in July of 2015, Monsanto identifies as a goal, as a company's goal, to invalidate the relevance of IARC, correct?
That is written here among several other points,
including the one to retract the IARC decision, correct?
Yes.
Number 3 there at the bottom says litigation prevention / defense. Do you see that, sir? Did Monsanto believe that invalidating the relevance of the IARC decision would help with its litigation defense?
I do think that Monsanto was aware at the time that litigation was likely, and so I think that's why that was listed as a goal there. As to whether the work around retraction and clarification would be important to the litigation, I don't think I'm competent to answer that.
So this is an email from Ms. Link dated February 12, 2015, about a month before the IARC classification. The subject is revised IARC reactive messaging. Ms. Link says, attached, please find revised messaging for IARC. Do you see that?
I do.
And if you turn to the attachment 70, ending in base number 709, draft February 12, 2015, glyphosate key talking points following IARC's decision. This component represents the orchestrated outcry that could occur following the March 3 to 10th IARC monograph expert meeting. You see that, sir?
Yes, I see the sentence you're referring to.
So now we have 2 plans created leading up to the IARC classification, where Monsanto identifies its efforts in responding to the IARC classification as entailing an orchestrated outcry, correct?
No, I think this document is really just a set of key talking points that would be shared with various groups as part of preparation for the IARC opinion to be published, and then whether those groups actually used any of these points or issued any communications or responded to any inquiries would be their decision to make.
I wasn't asking about those groups, I was asking about Monsanto's plan, where it's identified this component represents the orchestrated outcry that could follow, that could occur following the March 3 to 10th IARC monograph expert meeting. And my question to you, sir, was, we've now looked at 2 documents where Monsanto characterizes its efforts in response to IARC as creating an orchestrated outcry, correct?
Yes, this is the second document that uses those particular words. But again, I think this is a set of talking points, or actually several sets of talking points that would be provided to different groups for their review and to use, whether they chose to do so or not.
So we have employees in the Monsanto Corporation using the term orchestrated outcry to refer to the efforts across 2 documents. But here today now, you're saying that that's not actually what happened.
No, what I've explained in several responses now is that the efforts that Monsanto undertook after the IARC opinion was published involved, yes, engagement with third parties to provide information, share talking points and other resources, but then outreach to the media to ensure balance and accuracy and the right context and perspective on the science in their coverage of our product.
So you use words like balance, accuracy, so forth. I have not seen a single one of the words that you identified in any Monsanto plan that we have looked at today, correct?
In the 10 or so documents today, I don't recall seeing those specific words, but I can tell you when I have conversations with my colleagues, we often are discussing our goal to strive for balance in reporting about our company and about our product.
Mr. Murphy, here's Exhibit 13 to your deposition. This is an email from Dan Goldstein dated March 3rd, 2015 regarding draft op-ed materials. You work with Dan Goldstein?
I did work with Dr. Goldstein, yes.
And Dr. Goldstein says, I have written 5 potential draft op-eds for the medical toxicologist to work from. This also includes a general purpose couple of paragraphs on criticism of IARC generally that can be grafted in the other versions. See that?
I do see that.
An example of the talking points that Monsanto would have provided to third parties to defend glyphosate in the media.
Yes, I mean this appears to be some information that Dr. Goldstein had assembled with some message points, and that he was sharing it with what appears by their email addresses to be some other medical doctors and scientists, and he explains in his in the email, this will give a good starting point. And we can coordinate op-ed versions as needed. Even below that, not intended to tell you what to say, just grist for the mill to help you create what you want to say.
Has Monsanto allocated millions of dollars to responding to the IR classification?
Yes.
Do you know roughly how much Monsanto allocated in 2016?
I can only speak within the context of public affairs activities, things that I would have been directly involved in. But in 2016, I believe for some of the projects I was involved in, it was around 16 or 17 million.
So 16 to 17 million in 2016 on general media relations pertaining to glyphosate, correct?
Media relations in multiple countries. We have to deal with multiple languages, digital media, and other activities.
Now, part of your corporate engagement responsibilities at Monsanto involved coordinating the Let Nothing Go campaign, correct, sir?
Yes, I would say I was one of the people on point for that effort.
Did the Let Nothing Go campaign involve making Monsanto's opponents uncomfortable?
I don't think that's an accurate characterization. I think it was the effort was much more about realizing in the European context there was a significant amount of coverage on glyphosate. As we discussed earlier, this renewal process was occurring. Glyphosate was receiving a tremendous amount of coverage in the media, and this effort was more focused on reaching out and trying to achieve accuracy and balance in that reporting.
So I've just handed you an email with an attachment, and it's dated February 24th, 2014. That's over a year before the IARC classification, correct?
Yes, it's February 24th, 2014.
Yes, sir. And if you look at the front page of the email, it says, Mr. Derns says, we agree that our challenges are twofold. See that?
I see that.
And he sends it to Mr. Richard Garnett, correct?
Dr. Garnett, yes.
Dr. Garnett. And Dr. Garnett is based in Europe on behalf of Monsanto, correct?
He was at the
If you turn, sir, to the PowerPoint presentation, it says risk versus return. See that?
Yes.
Is Monsanto's position that in initiating efforts such as Let Nothing Go, there was an inherent risk versus benefit calculation entailed in those initiatives?
No, would be my answer. No.
And if you turn over the page, it says all about winning the argument. See that?
I do, and then there are some different colored blocks.
Right. And then opposite that page, it says to win the argument, we need to actively tell our story, build the right relationships, let nothing go, and discomfort our opposition. See that, sir?
I do see that.
So, does the Let Nothing Go campaign involve Monsanto discomforting his opposition?
I don't think that is an accurate characterization whatsoever. And specifically to your question on Let Nothing Go, no. Let Nothing Go, as I've described it, was about engaging with the media, setting the record straight on inaccurate stories. It was not about, as it says here, discomforting opposition.
So, do you have any reason to doubt that Monsanto employees created this PowerPoint presentation?
All I can tell you is I'm not sure who created this, if this was a Monsanto employee or someone at a public relations agency. I don't know.
But you do know that Monsanto employees, including Mr. Garnett, Vincent Baselier, and David Carpintero, received this and, as Mr. Dern says, agreed on the challenges facing Monsanto, correct?
I do see that it was sent to a number of Monsanto employees.
Do you believe that in Monsanto's communications with the world regarding IARC, it's all about winning the argument?
No, I think in the context of our engagement with the media and the public, it's as I've described. It's about sharing context. It's about seeking balance. In a market like the European Union, which we've been discussing here in particular, where there was so much inaccurate information about our products in the media, it was important for us to reach out and engage and build relationships, and that was the focus of the Let Nothing Go effort.
Sir, the graphic in this PowerPoint demonstrates a lack of balance, correct? It says all about winning the argument. And you were just testifying about Monsanto's desire to seek balance in the conversation. It's just not what happened inside of Monsanto, was it, sir?
I really don't know how to interpret this graphic. I think it's extremely vague. And I don't have the context of how it was actually discussed or presented in the room at the time.
Was this deck even part of the Let Nothing Go campaign or initiative, to your knowledge?
So in looking at the deck and then the email on the top, this particular presentation appears to have been part of a discussion that took place a year or so before we began the Let Nothing Go effort in the European Union. So I think this actually predates our kind of initiation of the Let Nothing Go effort.
I believe you explained that in Europe there was a sort of a two-step process with regard to renewal of glyphosate. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, the process in the European Union for the renewal of any pesticide product, glyphosate is just one example, has multiple phases. There's first the scientific work that has to be done by a rapporteur member state. So in the case of glyphosate, that was Germany and the BFR, the German Federal Institute for Risk Assessment. And then that is reviewed by the European Food Safety Authority. So that is the scientific phase of the evaluation of the product. Once that is complete, there's a second phase where representatives of the member states of the European Union come together in a standing committee, and they vote to actually reauthorize the active ingredient.
Okay. And to your knowledge, what have the regulators, the scientific bodies in Europe, said about the safety of glyphosate?
My understanding is that whether it's the German BFR or the European Food Safety Authority or subsequently the European Chemicals Agency, which also conducted a review, have all found that glyphosate is safe for use and not carcinogenic.
Okay. Is it fair to say that in your view that was a decision or decisions that were based on the science as opposed to public affairs work?
That's correct. My understanding is that those agencies they're scientific bodies with experts who are capable of and charged with reviewing the robust regulatory studies that are submitted to them.